Welcome to preparing an Illustrator file for the Vinyl Printer Cutter, presented by the Mount Royal University Library Maker Studio. In this video, you will learn how to prepare your Adobe Illustrator file for the Printer Cutter tool in the Maker Studio. For more project ideas, resources, and information, you can go to the Maker Studio website, which is found on the Mount Royal University Library website under Spaces. In this video, you will learn how to download the Roland Versaworks swatch. You will learn how to create a cut line for different types of images in Illustrator. You will learn how to create a cut line for text. And you will learn how to upload your file to the Maker Studio website for printing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to download the Roland Versaworks swatch, and that'll be important for a cut line later. So what you need to do is go to the MRU library website. So that's where we are here. And then you're going to go to Spaces and you're going to go to Maker Studio. Okay, and here's the Maker Studio's website. And on here, you're going to go to Resources. Just right here, the Resources tab, and then it brings you down to our resources. And over here, we have two documents for the vinyl printer and cutter. So just click on either one of those and it'll open up with instructions on how to do what I'm telling you to do today. So if you actually like to read things rather than see it visually in a video, you can look here as well. But what we're looking for here is this link, right? So to create a cut line around your design, first you must download the Roland Versaworks swatch, which can be found here. So this is the link, and it's also in the other document for this tool. So we click on here, and what it does is it opens up the file, and it just looks like a blank page. Don't worry about that. You're just going to download it. So go up here to download and save it somewhere on your computer. I'm going to put mine on the desktop, somewhere you can find it. It's called Roland Versaworks. So later on when we're looking for it, we'll know to look for that file name. So just hit save, and there you go. Now it's downloaded onto your computer. Okay, let's get started importing an image and then making a cut line for a raster, and then later we'll do a cut line for a vector. So let's start by opening up creating our new document. So we're going to go to Create New in Illustrator, and we're going to choose Print, and we're going to make this into inches. There we go. So the default size here is letter, which is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. If you have a different material that you want to put your design into, I would recommend making your artboard the size of your material so that you can reference your design with the artboard. You'll see what I mean in a second. And then create. And there's our artboard. So like I said, this is 8.5 inches by 11. So when I do my design in here, I can see exactly how big it is, but it kind of helps to give me reference because I know that this is a piece of paper and my design will be inside it, and then I can imagine what the size is going to be. All right, so let's bring in an image. We're going to bring in a raster image, so an image that has pixels. So we're going to go to File and Place. There's my dog and cat image. I'm going to hit Place, and then I'm going to select or just click on the artboard. And if your picture is really big like mine, it's really easy to size it. You just hold down the Alt key, zoom out a little bit, and then grab onto one of these little white handles, hold the shift or the shift button, grab one of these little white handles and just pull down. You're holding the white handle so that your picture doesn't skew. There we go, and just bring it back over. And then zoom in by holding the Alt key and using the mouse wheel again. There we go. So this part is very important. You can see that this picture has an X on top of it, and that's because it's not embedded in this file. Illustrator is just pulling this picture, this image, from where it is on my computer. So it's fine as long as I'm working on it on this computer, but you will be submitting your file to the Maker Studio, and we won't have that image on our computer. So you'll need to embed it to make sure that it comes with your file. And to do that, it's super easy. There's this embed button up here in this toolbar. If you don't have this toolbar here, really easy to fix that. just go up to here where mine says Essentials Classic. Yours might say Essentials. Just click on the Essentials Classic and then this toolbar will appear. And it's really handy. So it's guessing that I might want to embed since I have an image, and I do. So I'm going to click on Embed. And now you can see that that X is gone and my image is embedded into my file. So when I send this or email it or whatever, this image will go with it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a cut line. So let's say I wanted to print this and make it into a sticker or into something on heat transfer so that it can go on a shirt. So how it works is the printer will print out this image just like any other printer, but then it rolls back the image into itself, and instead of printing, now it will use a blade, and it has to follow a specific code. So it'll actually follow this cut line that we're about to put in. So I'm going to draw a rectangle over top of this image, and I'm going to make that the cut line. So just go over here to Shapes, and I'm going to choose the rectangle tool. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle. There we go. So you can see that the fill is white and the stroke is none. So here the fill is white and the stroke is none. I'm just going to swap those so that there's no fill. You don't want any fill for this. And the stroke is white. So now you can see this is my rectangle, and this is where the cut line is going to be. So if I sent this to the printer, it would actually just print the image and this white rectangle over top of it, because it has to be a specific color and a specific size for the printer software to recognize that it's a cut line. So the size needs to be less than 0.25 points. So up here we can see that the stroke is 1 point. So I'm just going to select it and I'm going to put in 0.25 and enter. There we go. So now I know it's the right size, but I need it to be a specific color. I'm just going to use the selection tool here, and you remember that we downloaded the color swatch, and that's what we need it to be. So we're going to go and bring up the swatch panel. So we'll go to Window and Swatches. There we go. So now what I can do is I go to these three lines in the corner, and I go to Open Swatch Library, and then I go to Other Library. So again, the three lines in the right upper hand corner of the swatches panel, go to Open Swatch Library and then Other Library. And then I find where I had downloaded my file, or the swatch earlier, the Roland Versaworks. So I know I put it on my desktop. So I'm going to select desktop, and there it is. So I select that, the file, and I hit open, and there it is. There is our swatch. And what we need is this hot pink color. It's called Cut Contour. So if I make sure that my shape is selected, the one that I want to be the cut line, and then I make it hot pink, for some reason it turned the fill in, so I'm just going to swap that again. Boop, there we go. And make sure there's no fill. So you want no fill, and you want the stroke to be 0.25 for size, and you want the color to be this cut contour in the Roland Versaworks swatch. There we go, and it's hard to see, but it's there. So when this prints, it will print everything. It will not print this pink line. And then when it's done printing the image behind it, it will pull it back in to the machine, the printed image, and it will cut with a blade along this line. So I've made it a rectangle, but it doesn't have to be. I can get rid of this rectangle, just hit delete, and I could make another shape. I could make a circle. So I choose the ellipse tool, hold the shift button so it doesn't skew, and I could make a circle. And because we had this already chosen as the default, I'm just going to use the selection tool again to move. I can move it, there we go, and now you can see that that's the cut line. So it'll cut right along here. So after this is printed out, I can just take away this extra part if I wanted to, and because it'll be cut, and then I'll have a nice sticker or a heat transfer of this part inside. But what else you can do to take it a little further so that we're not wasting ink with this part around it is you can do what's called a clipping mask. So in order to do that, you just select your shape, hold down the Shift key and select your image so that everything is selected. And then you just right click and do Make Clipping Mask. Okay, the problem is though that your stroke is now changed and won't work as a cut line anymore, but we can fix that too. So what you need to do is you need to look at the Layers panel, which I have open here. If you don't see Layers, just go up to Window and then click on Layers, and your Layers panel will open up. Okay, so for Layers, you can see here, this is the main layer, and then there are levels inside the layer. So under here we've got our clipping mask, and what I can do is I can actually just select the ellipse, that's this one, and I can click on this little target, and now I can change the stroke again. So you can see it's saying no fill, no stroke, but we want the stroke to be that specific cut color. So I just make sure that the stroke is in front of the fill, and I go back to the swatch and I choose that color, and then I go back to the size, it's back to 1 point again, and I just make it 0.25, hit enter, there. So now the ellipse is the cut line, you can see it here, and it won't print, even though with a clipping mask your image is still there, but it won't print it. So that'll save us some ink. So there you go, that's how you create a cut line on a raster image. So remember, this path, this stroke, I mean, it just has to be that specific color and that specific size, and it'll be a cut line. So you could make a cut line out of any kind of shape that you wanted to. Okay, and now what we're going to do is show you how to create a cut line that follows the outline of your design or your shape. So we're going to bring in an image and we're going to vectorize it, because you can't do this with a raster image. You could do it in Photoshop, but you can't do it in Illustrator. So if you wanted to have a picture with like a frame like we did in the last one, you can use a raster image. And you can also create a cut line that looks like a frame, a circle or rectangle or whatever, around a vector image as well. You just cannot have the cut line follow the outline of your design with a raster image. So I'm going to show you how you can turn your image into vectors, and then how to create an outline, a cut line that it follows the outline of your picture. So let's insert, we'll hit place and just choose this. So this picture is a picture my son drew, and it's an image. That's why it has this X on it, or it's not embedded, but we couldn't edit it. I couldn't create a cut line very easily anyway to go and follow this flower. So let's say I wanted to make this flower into a sticker or into something that would go on a shirt. So what I have to do first is vectorize it. So I need Illustrator to trace it and turn it from pixels into vectors. So I'm going to go over to the image trace panel. There we go, it's open. And if you don't see image trace here, remember, go to Window, Image Trace, okay? And select my picture again. And because it's a black and white picture, I'm going to let it stay on black and white. And if you want more information on how to trace images in Illustrator, we have a whole video on tips and tricks on how to do that at the Maker Studio. Okay, so down here, I'm going to, under Advanced, so you can see I can click on Advanced. I'm going to click on Ignore White, and what that's going to do is it's going to take away all of this background because it registers as white. If this isn't white, I can show you how to get rid of that in just a minute. All right, so let's take a look at what it's going to look like. Okay, I don't really want this. This is probably just shadow from the picture, so I'm going to go to Threshold, and I'm going to just like put that down a little bit more maybe. Okay, let's try that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to unclick Preview, I'm going to click on Trace, and then I'm going to click on Expand. All right, so now you can see that it's a shape, it's vectors, so that's great. So if I click off it, I can't just select this guy because when Illustrator traces your image, it'll group everything together. So I'm going to right click on it when it's selected and select ungroup. So now I can just select this little bit and hit delete and it gets rid of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you how to make a cut line that'll follow the exact outline of your image. So I'm going to go to layers, the layers panel, there we go, and remember layers is also under window. And I'm going to make a copy of this layer, so I'm just going to select layer, I'm going to drag it down to this little icon, and I'm going to let it go. And now you can see I have a copy. So my original layer, I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally change it, and I'm going to hide it because I don't actually need to see it right now. Okay, so we're on our first layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand it. So I'm going to go to Object and Expand, and then after that I am going to go to the Pathfinder panel and I'm going to choose Unite. I'm going to click on that one. Okay, so if that doesn't work, and I didn't think it would with this image, usually that will work, and what it'll do is it'll just give you a fill through the whole thing and just one stroke for the outside. But this is a compound path, so I actually need to release the compound path and then do it. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say release compound path, and what that does is it stops it from saying that this is a hole inside here. Okay, so now I can use this Unite, and there we go. That's exactly what I wanted it to look like. So we have a black fill. You can see black fill here, and we have no stroke. The stroke is none. So what I would like to do is swap these. So I'm going to click on this little bent arrow and swap them. And now I would like the stroke to be the cut line. So I'm going to click on that color, that hot pink color that we had downloaded earlier. And then I'm going to go to the size of my stroke, and I'm going to change it to 0.25. Hit enter. There we go. So now you can see I have a cut line that's exactly the shape of my image, and I can see that by now. There we go. And it's there. So at this point, I could submit this drawing or this design to the Maker Studio, and they would print it, and it would cut out a sticker exactly around this image and print this image in it as well. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what happens when you try to do a trace and the last step on a more complicated picture than the drawing that I had imported last time. So I'm going to bring in, so File, Place, that first picture that I had with the cat and the dog. There we go. Got to resize that again. Okay, there we go. So let's say I just wanted to have just this cat by itself, nothing around it. You can do that. So what I would do first is I would trace it. So I would go from having it be a raster image to a vector image. So I'm going to do that by going to Image Trace. And because it's got color, I'm actually going to choose High Fidelity Photo. And you don't have to do that. It's saying it's a really complicated picture and it's going to take a bit. I'm saying that's okay. So there we go. Don't worry about that. Now I could have chosen black and white if I wanted to, and it would look different. I can show you what that would look like too in just a second. So it's taking a long time because it's vectorizing a really complicated picture, right? There's a lot more than just a drawing in this. So if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see in the preview, it's just a bunch of shapes with fill, just a lot of different shades, like a paint by number. All right, so if I wanted to just take this cat out of the picture, I would make sure to trace it. So I unclick preview, trace, and then expand. And there we go. So what you can do now is if you click off it, you'll see when you're clicking on it, it's all grouped. So if I right click and I select ungroup, now what I can do is I can, I can select a bunch of it and hit delete if I wanted to get rid of everything but the cat. But the easiest thing to do really is to use this lasso tool. So I'm just going to select that up here and I'm going to just draw around the cat as close as I can. Oops, there we go. So this will take you longer, obviously, than the simple drawing that my son had done. And then you just make sure that it meets up and it'll select everything in there. I can group all of that together and then move it out of the way. And then select everything else and delete it. There we go. What I could have also done is drawn everything else, a circle around everything else instead of just the cat. But what we can do now is we can ungroup. And you can zoom in and you can start deleting some of the shapes that are closer. You don't want to have any floating shapes. The blade will cut them once we have a path around it for the printer. So this will take you a little longer, like I said, but this is an option that you can do if your picture is a little more complicated. So let's say I had cleaned up all of this. So now I'm just going to group it all together so I can move it again. So group. So now you do the exact same thing you did with that flower. So just imagine that none of this stuff is here, okay? So I would go down to layers and I would copy the layer. And then I would lock my first layer, same thing I did before. And now I'm going to select this one. Oh, and hide the first layer. And I'm going to go to Object and then Expand. And then I'm going to go to Unite. There we go. So what it's done is it's created an outline with none of the lines inside, but the problem is there's actually these little tiny shapes in here, and we don't want once we just want this outside shape. So what you can do is you can actually bring up, or actually you could just swap these. There we go. And then I'm going to ungroup again, and I'm going to just grab the outline of it and I'm going to move it. Oh, well, that didn't work. Hold on. We're going to release compound path, and then I'm just going to grab the outline and I'm going to move it by itself. There we go. So now we just have the outline, and what I can do now is I can delete all of this. So again, just like in the first one, I had to release the compound path. And now what I can do is I can bring up this one again, and I can just line it up perfectly like that. And now I can make the stroke that hot pink cut line, and I can make the stroke 0.25. So what it's going to do is it's going to cut around this cat, and it's not going to, none of those little tiny cuts will be on the inside. All right, let's talk about making text and into stickers or heat transfer, and then doing the cut lines around text. So if you have some text and you wanted to make it into a sticker, it's going to have to be large enough for the blade to be able to cut around it okay. If you have it too small, anything under 20 even, I think that even 20 is too small, it won't work. So remember, this is a piece of paper, and the blade, if you have it just the letters, you have the cut line around the letters, the blade is going to follow that. And then if it's too small, the blade will pick up pieces of it, pick up this little E, and it'll start dragging it with it. It doesn't work. So if you do have small text, so like let's say it's this one, and you do want it in like 12 point, let's say, what I recommend you do is just write out your text just like I did, and then make a label, make a border around it. So if you want it to be a rectangle, just like put a little rectangle around it, and then make sure, just swap those, and then make the rectangle the cut line. So that you would change, whoops, swap that again. Sorry, make the fill none. There we go, so that you have no fill and your stroke is that cut and contour color, right, from the Roland Versaworks swatch. And then I would go up here and change this to 0.25. There you go. So when this prints, it will print out your text and then cut along this label or this line. And it doesn't have to be a rectangle. It can be whatever shape you want, whatever. You could even just draw a line, something like that, as long as it's this specific color and the specific stroke size. Okay, but if you did want your text to be bigger, here we go, we'll just select that, and we're going to, there we go, make it bigger. So I think this size would probably work, maybe even a little bigger. What you do then is you get it exactly the way you want it to look. You've written out whatever you want, and then you're going to go to type, and you're going to go to create outlines. And if you don't see this, if this was grayed out, it's because you're still editing. So if I have it like that, if I go to type, create outlines is grayed out. So if it is like that, all you have to do is hit escape, and then you'll get that blue bounding box, and then you'll be able to do it. So type and create outlines. So now what it's done is it's not text anymore, now it's shapes, and it has a stroke, and it's great, nice and easy. So actually what I can do, you see here it says the fill is black and the stroke is none. So I can bring the stroke forward, and then I can make the stroke the cut contour color, and then I can actually size it to be 0.25. So very easy. So if I click off it, it's hard to see, but if I zoom in, there's the cut line. So what's going to happen is the printer will print out your text, and then it'll cut along each of these letters where the cut lines are. So very easy. All right, so now we're going to submit our file to the Maker Studio to be printed. So I'm going to, let's say this is exactly how I want it to look. I've got my cut lines, everything is great. So I'm going to go to File and then Save. And it has to be an Illustrator file, so it needs to say .ai. I'm just going to call this test. There we go, and I'll save it on my desktop so it's nice and easy to find. So save. Yep, that looks good. Okay. All right, so what I do now is I go to the Maker Studio website. So go back to Spaces, and I'll go to Maker Studio. Scroll down here, and you can see under File Submission, which is also here, I can submit a vinyl printer cutter file. So I click on that, and what opens up is a form that I would fill out. So you're going to put in your email address, your name, you know, if you're a student or not, all this kind of information, and then you choose the material you'd like to be printed in. You'd like your file to be printed in. So it's whatever you want. So if you want heat transfer, just heat transfer white is actually what I would use, and then different colors of vinyl. And if you want to see what these look like, you can come into the Maker Studio and have a look at different samples. And then you will put your size. And the reason that we want you to put your size in is so that we know that you know how big your file is. If we go back to my Illustrator file, and if I select my design, up here in the toolbar, it's going to tell me the size of it. So you can see here, W is for wide and H is for height, right, or width. So it is 7.2994 inches, and this is the height of it. Okay, so the reason that we want you to fill out the size of it here is so that we know that you know how big you want it to be. Okay, now let's just keep going down a little bit, put in how many copies you'd like. And this is another link that you can use to get the Maker or the Roland Versaworks color swatch, and then you add your file. So I'm going to go to add file and go upload from my drive. No, not from my drive. Upload from my device. There we go. And go to desktop, and then there it is, test. So I go open, and there it is. And it's an AI file. So if I did have this on my Google Drive, I could load it from there, which is pretty cool. I'm going to hit cancel, but you would hit upload. And then if you had any comments, you would write that there, and then you'd hit submit. So that would go to the Maker Studio, and then if there are any issues or if it's finished, we'll email you, and you would come and pick it up. And if you had heat transfer as your chosen material, you would bring in whatever it is you want to put your heat transfer onto when it's finished, and then you would use our heat press and attach it onto it, like to make a shirt. If you have further questions, you can contact the Maker Studio at makerstudio@mtroyal.ca, or you can email the Maker Studio staff.